Hi folks. I want to share with you an obscure observation about the universe and about our relationship to the universe. If we go way back in history, we had a very man-centered view of the universe, which was understandable because our notions about cosmology were very primitive. I'm talking about way back when we had notions about gods in nature. All we had at our disposal was, we saw that there was the earth and there was the heavens. And we didn't know very much about the heavens. We could observe the motion of the sun and the moon, but we didn't know what stars were. We certainly had no notion of galaxies. That only came relatively recently with the advent of telescopes, particularly the Hubble Space Telescope. So it was understandable to think that Earth was the center of the universe. So man seems very important. That's what I'm getting at. That started to change with Copernicus around the 15th or 16th century, when he proposed what's called the heliocentric model of the universe. Before that, it was called the geocentric model. Geo as in Earth. Heliocentrism is the idea that the sun is the center of the universe. So it takes mankind a little bit further away from the center. We seem a little bit less important in an intuitive sense. Now remember, religion is a big thing. Christianity is a big thing at this time. And Christianity teaches that man was made in the image of God. So if man is no longer central to the universe, that's a little odd, isn't it? And yet that is the case. So heliocentrism took a long time to catch on properly. The church was resistant to it, and even scientists of that period were also resistant to it as well, because it really does take a lot of effort to change established dogma, whether religious or otherwise. But particularly in the 20th century, and you've all probably seen a deep field photograph taken by the Hubble Space Telescope, where we get to see a tiny little patch of our sky is actually, and I mean like a little 1-inch slice of a photograph of the sky is littered with other galaxies. So we live on the spiral arm of the Milky Way galaxy. I can't remember the figures, whether it's 100 billion stars or something like that in our galaxy, with the potential of there being 100 billion galaxies. You know what? We can't even count the galaxies. And that's due to a kind of trick that's played on us by the speed of light. Light takes time to travel, and when we say something is a light year away, that's actually a measure of distance, not time. Even though it says year, it's called a light year because it's the measure of the distance that light takes to travel in a year. So if you have if there's a galaxy out there that's further away than the age of the Earth, so the Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. If there's a galaxy that's 7.5 billion light years away, and if we see the light from that galaxy, then the light must have been traveling for longer than the age of the Earth. So we've only got like a window when we see, and what we see eventually is the past. We're seeing 7 billion years into the past, as it were. So the stars in the sky that you see, you're looking into the distant past when you actually look at the sky. Anyway, I'm getting off track here, but I'm just illustrating that we can't see the whole universe, so we can't really know whether it's finite or infinite. We can't even really be absolutely sure that it's the same elsewhere in the universe, as in the laws of physics being exactly the same as it is in our particular pocket of the universe, as in the pocket that we can see. But anyway, what is readily apparent from this is that mankind is not at the center of anything. And even when we look at the age at which mankind arrived, we are quite a late addition to the universe. The universe was around a long time before mankind was around. So the old picture from the scriptures that God created the earth in 6 days, and can't remember what day he created man on. The idea that he created it for us starts to sound a little thin. So all of this, it's all very rational, and it can make you feel very, very small. And it feels like it's the right perspective to have. But just recently, I have been getting to grips with a slightly different perspective that I think is equally rational, that isn't always noticed, that tends to pull me back towards the notion that the universe exists for us after all. What I'm getting at is, the question is this: how do you determine what is important? We intuitively think it's to do with size. So the universe is so vast. It's so big, we're so small. How could we be important? But what if the true measure of importance is not size, but complexity? Here's what I want you to get. If we look at the very large, if we look at the motions of stars, even the interactions of two galaxies that are colliding, we can plot a thing like that on a computer. The laws that govern all of those motions, although they were hard to find out about, they are ultimately fairly straightforward and simple. Einstein's relativity. Okay? When you look at the other end, the other fractal end of the spectrum, and you get into atoms and subatomic particles, we find that we can put together a very rigorous mathematics that shows us how all this holds together. And while it was hard to find all this stuff out, and we're not at the bottom of that yet, the equations boil down to things that are straightforward, deterministic, simple. Now, in the middle of those two fractal ends of the spectrum, we have this. We have creatures of this relative size who are very, very complex. And the one statement that really seals the deal for me is the fact that we have not discovered anything in the entire universe that is as complex as the human brain. The human brain is the most complex structure that we know about in the entire universe. Now, doesn't that start to make you feel a little bit bigger than you might have felt if you were just looking at cosmology alone, or just studying microbiology or quantum theory? Think about it. How do we determine our importance? Size or complexity? I can't know for sure, I'm speculating. But if it's complexity, then that means that this all exists, this whole universe, it all exists for us and creatures like us scattered throughout the cosmos. So notice this, I'm not going back to the old Earth-centered view, but I am advocating a creature-centered view of the universe. See, I come from the perspective that the universe is conscious. Not in the sense that stars and planets are conscious. I don't think they are. If stars and planets are conscious, then that consciousness is very robotic in nature, because the stars are just behaving according to preset mathematical equations. There's no complexity there, like the way there is right here. So complexity occurs in the center. You've got these two extremes that are very simple, and you've got this complex world of creatures. When you really think about the Earth, we are like this, I don't know what's the best analogy, maybe an oasis in the desert. Compare what's going on with this planet to all other planets that we know about. It's amazing, isn't it? Whatever this is, whatever's going on this world is absolutely amazing. And I do think it stands to reason that it would happen on other worlds as well, where the conditions just happen to be right, because it's a very big cosmos. I think the universe is conscious in the sense that if you imagine before the Earth was here, the universe has some kind of primordial consciousness as part of its field-like makeup. In the way the universe is a unified field. Well, part of that field is a kind of primordial awareness, a basic drive to experience itself via form. I cannot prove that, but that is the best explanation, I think, for consciousness, for the hard problem of consciousness, of why subjective experience exists at all when it's a profoundly weird thing. The universe is conscious. You're conscious because the universe is conscious. A bug is conscious because the universe is conscious. See what I'm getting at? It's always striving to become something like this. And it takes a long time for it to do it. And this is striving to become something more than this. Because there's no such thing as a finished product of evolution. We're just at a point in evolution. If the conditions on this planet were to change drastically, but not so drastically that we couldn't survive, we would find that future generations of human beings would evolve changes to compensate for the stresses of the new environment, and we'd look different and we'd be different than what we are today. So that's what happens. The universe strives to come into being as consciousness interfacing with other consciousness, and it does it through a multitude of forms, and it all comes together via this crazy thing called chemistry. So anyway, just some speculative thought for you. For me personally, because I bring a lot of personal philosophy to the table, it's more than just speculation for me. I do think that if there is a function to the universe, that function, I didn't say a purpose. I don't think the universe has like a specific end game in time. But if there's a general function to the universe, I think it's to experience itself via form. So, think about it.